Many of our listeners may remember Gloria Steinem. She championed women's causes in the 70s. But today I've met my new best friend, Edward Bartlett, and he's sticking up for men, for dudes all across the globe. Edward, welcome to The Truth.
Thank you, John. Great to see you.
What caused you to champion men's rights? I don't, do we really need somebody to stick up for us?
Well, John, have you heard the word patriarchy or oppressive patriarchy? Have you heard those terms?
Sure. I'm not eminently familiar with them, but I'm vaguely acquainted with those terms.
Yeah, well, those are words that feminists throw around all the time to claim that women are oppressed by an all-pervasive, all-powerful patriarchy. So we actually decided to look at the actual numbers, the actual data. And so we looked at, well, are men living longer lives than women or shorter lives? Well, turns out men are dying 5 years sooner than women. Then we looked at enrollments in colleges. Globally, men are less likely to be in college than women. Then we looked at homelessness. 72% of the homeless are men. And actually, we identified 12 areas where men are lagging behind women, usually by quite a big distance, a big gap. So if there is such a thing as the patriarchy, those patriarchs are doing a pretty bad job looking out for the interests of men and boys.
Well, but do we need looking after? I mean, I've really never even stopped to think that I'm being really persecuted or put down or marginalized until really I started reading material that you sent me in preparation for this interview. And then I'm saying, gosh, there are some people that are being pretty rough on us guys. You cite Nancy Mace, who I actually like, but evidently she's got a real thing about a real grudge against men. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I know, who's not particularly nice to me. I've never understood why. But now that you've pointed out that she rants about guys, maybe that's it. And Harriet Hagman, who I also know, who I gave money to when she ran for Congress against that wonderful Liz Cheney. I don't care what she says about dudes. She beat Liz Cheney. That's good enough for me. But
Right.
So what is it? I mean, I just remember what was the guy's name from the LA riots? Rodney. What was his name?
Was it Rodney King?
Rodney King. Can't we just all get along?
Yeah. Well, again, I just want to emphasize we've looked at the numbers. These numbers all come from the World Health Organization or other global, respected groups. So it really is mind-boggling when you think, yeah, it turns out that men are lagging behind women in 12 different areas, and I've only mentioned 3 out of the 12. So you mentioned Nancy Mace. Yeah. Well, Nancy Mace does not like men very much, and I'll give you one example. I could give several examples of Nancy Mace, but several years ago, they held a hearing on persons who go missing or they disappear. All right, and the hearing was focusing on what they call persons of color, POC, and it turns out. So we're talking about blacks and Hispanics and Indians. It turns out, according to the FBI, there are a lot more male persons who go missing or lost for whatever reason, according to the FBI. But this hearing that Nancy Mace, she was a co chair on this hearing. They only wanted to talk about females, right? Now, doesn't that strike you as a little bit odd, a little bit biased, a little bit prejudiced, that they would not even mention the fact that black men are more likely to go missing compared to black women?
That is actually very surprising to me. I never see a missing persons flyer for a male unless it's some kid that left a bar at 2 a.m. and that was the last time he was seen. I've
Right.
seen those flyers, but if a woman goes missing, it is pervasive on the news now that you
Yeah,
call my attention to it.
you're exactly right. Again, FBI says there are far more men that go missing than women.
So who are nabbing these men?
Yeah, so I've actually done a deep dive into this issue, and it turns out that uh, the majority of missing persons turn out to be adolescents who are runaways. In other words, they, for whatever reason, they just can't deal with mom or dad, and they just want to leave. Okay, so they do. They get up and leave. They don't tell parents where they're going. They just kind of disappear, and in a week or two, hey, they come back. They stay with a friend, and then the friend kicks them out, so they come back home, and they're no longer missing. So that's where a large percentage, I believe about half of all missing persons, are the teenage runaways.
That reminds me of a story. I have a buddy who ran away from home when he was 12 or 13, and he was gone for a day or two. He finally got overcome with guilt and was starting to worry that his parents would be worrying. So he went to his pastor, who then gave him a ride home. When they rang the doorbell and they embraced with his dad, and everybody was cheery. The pastor left, and the dad turned to him and said, "Son, don't you ever go over my head like that again."
Right. But the story we're talking about illustrates one of the favorite techniques of feminists, which is to promote a sense of hysteria about an issue. They dramatically misrepresent the facts, and then they promote a sense of hysteria, like, oh, all these kids, male or female, are somehow being abducted, kidnapped, being killed. That's the impression they like to give. Of course, that's not truthful.
So, do we know how many male and female, both sexes, go missing each year?
Yeah, yeah. The FBI has really very detailed statistics. Anybody can go there. Just I think it's under missing, FBI missing, and anybody can find it. And you can look for any year you want to. They break it down by race, by Hispanic, American Indian. Uh, and so it's a very detailed database. So there's really no debate about the facts.
Just in broad brush terms, how many people are we talking about?
It's been several years since I did a deep dive, but it's like each year I think we're talking about you know in the thousands or maybe 10,000 in the
Wow.
United States. Yeah.
You feel so strongly about this that you've created a 501c3 called SAVE, Stop Abusive and Violent Environments. What are your objectives? What motivated you to start at number one and number two? What are the goals of SAVE?
Well, John, we formed Save a number of years ago during the during the Obama administration, when everybody was freaking out about the alleged epidemic of sexual assault on college campuses. And you may remember that. You remember the make believe incident at University of Virginia.
I do. That was a travesty of justice if there ever has been one.
You remember that? Well, that was all part of that hysteria
Mm,
that was going on at that point in time. So, so a policy, it was called a Dear Colleague letter. That was the official name for it. It came out in 2011, and it was so utterly unfair to accuse male students because it took away their due process rights, like the presumption of innocence. So that was where we started out a number of years ago, was to assure due process for students who had been accused of sexual misconduct.
You also have focused on the United Nations and claimed that this infection has actually invaded the UN, and they have a branch or something or other called UN Women.
That's right, John. So UN Women was formed around 2010. So it's a relatively new agency within the United Nations, and they say that their objective is gender equality. Well, again, we've done a deep dive. We've gone through their website. Um, and let me just give you one example: domestic violence. We know the CDC says this domestic violence is an equal opportunity problem. Women are just as likely to be perpetrators of domestic violence as men. Uh, this is truly an equal opportunity problem. But go to the website of UN Women, and this is true globally, not just in the US, right? Go to the website of UN Women and enter the words male victim domestic violence. There'll be nothing, absolutely nothing, not even a single mention of this idea. It's all about female victims of domestic violence. So they're creating this hysteria and this misinformation in order to push for legislation.
Well, you've also indicated that these UN women, in cases of real disasters, like in Afghanistan and a hurricane in the Caribbean, that they put out a warning or an admonition to please prioritize saving women and girls.
Right.
I mean, how can that be the official policy of any self-respecting organization? I mean, little girls matter, but little boys don't. So you prioritize little girls. I mean, that's just. I mean, I want to prioritize everybody, but women and children. Whatever happened to that one?
Right. Well, um, I mean, let's be just utterly candid here, John. The UN Women is not telling the truth. They're lying, and we're not the only ones who are saying that. There was actually a report issued just last week, done by a fellow named John Nuzzo, Nuzzo. Anybody can look on the website Nuzzo and see the analysis. He analyzed a whole month worth of tweets from UN Women, and actually, I'll quote his conclusion. Quote: UN Women's main message was that women around the world are experiencing widespread victimizations, including unequal rights, and that gender equality can be achieved only if women are given more money, greater political power, and further protections from perceived physical and non-physical harms. So, so that's obviously not truthful. We've already talked about these 12 areas of male disadvantage. UN Women will never even acknowledge even a single one of these areas of male disadvantage.
Well, this is all very stunning to me. I mean, I've been aware of the women's movement for decades.
Me too.
I open talking about Gloria Steinem, but I've never really felt vulnerable or that I was being taken for granted or abused. There, you have uncovered some statistics that really did surprise me. Commitment to marriage: men are more likely than women to agree that married people will find happiness. 38% of men versus 22% of women. Now, my wife would be a focus group of one that would argue that point because she's very happy, and I make sure of it. Parental aspirations: men want children more than women, 57 to 45. Um, Intimate partner violence: men are more likely than women to be victims of domestic violence. That I had absolutely no earthly idea of. And then husbands initiate 37% of divorces, while women initiate 69% of divorces.
Right, right.
These are all revelations to me. Where did this data come from, and can we rely on it being accurate?
They are all accurate. They are all reliable. Those facts come from one of our press releases that we wanted to put out because this is one of the ways feminists create this hysteria is they create these negative stereotypes, and then they vilify men as being abusers, as being deadbeats, as being scoundrels, as not dependable, as poor fathers, deadbeat. I mean, the list of epithets is really astonishing. But again, look at the actual numbers, and maybe the most oppressive is that if you look at which person is more likely to cheat sexually on their partner, it turns out women are more likely to be the cheaters than men. Now, I'm willing to bet you've never heard that before. Again, that speaks to the stereotypes that are put out there.
Well, I wish some of those women would come and hit on me just to aggrandize my already overinflated ego, but it just never happens. So I don't know where these women are. But so
Yeah.
how are we going to change this, Ed? What is SAVE going to do about it?
Well, the most important thing that John is to simply get word out with our press releases, through radio interviews like our conversation right now. We also do lobbying on Capitol Hill. Last week, we had actually a large group of people meeting with staffers to talk about exactly these issues. So it's a process. You mentioned earlier about our early beginnings. I talked about due process on college campuses. That's one of our major victories. We succeeded in getting a new due process regulation enacted in 2020. That was during the first Trump administration. That was largely as a result of our efforts. So, so we have that victory. Another victory is that you may have heard that former President Biden introduced a new Title IX regulation that wanted to change the definition of sex to include gender identity. Did you hear about that?
No, but I just, I try and filter the noise. And so when I hear malarkey like that, I just put it in the category of
Well, I'm
noise.
kind of the same
I mean,
way.
I'm good with their men and their women, and then there are other people who, well, I mean, I do believe that there is a spectrum of if you put masculinity on one end and femininity on the other. I think we all know people, men who are more in touch with their feminine side, or whatever
Yeah,
that saying goes. And I
right.
think that there's some women that I really wouldn't want to run into in a bar if they were drunk and we got into a tussle, because they'd
Right,
probably whoop my butt.
right,
So, I mean, I
right.
do think there are iterations and variations, but at some point you just got to kind of refer to common sense and say, look,
You have to refer to common sense,
look at
which
your private
again,
parts. And for me, that's good enough to define you male or female.
well, exactly. But again, feminists often defy common sense and defy science. So this Biden regulation, it was a Title IX regulation, which is the federal law that's designed to stop sex discrimination in schools. That regulation said, "Hey, we're going to redefine sex to include gender identity." Well, we were strongly opposed to that, and we pulled together a coalition of 240 organizations, and we succeeded in blocking it. So that's another one of our success stories.
But Ed, I think you'd have to acknowledge that. Is it okay to call you Ed or Edward?
Sure, yeah,
Isn't it fair to acknowledge that women still have their hands full in a lot of context, particularly like, I mean, you got um, governors of states, for God's sakes, putting tampons in men bathrooms. What is that about? But then, it flips the other way too, because they want men to be able to use women's bathrooms, and they want men to be able to compete in women's sports and use the same locker room. I think that is textbook certification for mental infirmity. I think those people should automatically don't collect $500, do not pass go straight to the crazy house.
yeah. This is textbook insanity. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about it. It violates science. It violates common sense. it's just craziness.
Well, and it
And
violates those women who've worked their entire lives to become Olympic athletes in swimming or weightlifting or track,
right,
and then all of
right.
a sudden they're competing against some dude.
It's absolutely unfair. And again, UN Women is one of the most strongest proponents of this gender uh, transgender ideology. And we're actually our upcoming press release is going to call them out specifically on that issue because it does it defies common sense. It defies science. It's obviously not fair to women.
Well, I just think that Rodney King was right. Can't we just all get along? And like, what was her name? The comedian that is no longer. They booted her because she was really mean to her staff. The gal that danced all the time. What's her name? Ellen DeGeneres. Yeah, she says be kind to each other. Well, it turned out she wasn't kind to anybody, especially the people that work for her. But I mean, George Bush, the elder, really, one of the few things that he said that I actually agreed with or trusted him to on was we need a kinder, gentler nation. That sounds very aspirational to me today. I don't think we've made progress. I think we've gone backwards. How do we how do we get
We absolutely have gone backwards. We're seeing greater animosity, greater name calling, uh, and we see it especially young feminist women are especially aggressive in their vilification of men. And, that's a long discussion, but it, I think everybody has seen that in their own lives or seen it on the internet.
Well, it's interesting. It has been a fascinating conversation. You have enlightened me. It's a subject I'd never really consciously thought about. I mean, somewhere in the back of my mind, those thoughts occurred to me, but I've never really felt particularly abused. I mean, if I go back and think about women who have been uncharitable or disrespectful to me, they are in the vast, vast minority. Actually, Anthony and I have been trying to figure out how we can get more women to turn into our broadcast. Our broadcast inexplicably skews 80% men and 20% female. And I would have thought it would have been much the opposite because most dudes are watching football Saturday between noon and 2 when we come on the air. But I
Right.
really, the YouTube audience is amazing. That's where the only real demographics we can glean, but it's 80% men and 20% female. And
Interesting.
pretty much broadly scattered throughout the age groups from 20 to 60 and above.
Right.
We did want to try and attract more women. I'm not sure this is the right formula for it, though, Ed. I think we just had a lot of women tune out.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you want to attract young, angry feminists. I don't
Yes.
think that would be, you know, I don't think that would be an asset to your operation. And it's really very very interesting to look at what's going on with young feminist women. For example, their mental health is really in the garbage. 56% of young liberal women, of course, a liberal woman is always going to be a feminist. 56% say that they have seen, have been told by a healthcare provider that they have a mental health problem. Think about that. I mean, you're talking about depression, you're talking about paranoia, you're talking about, you know, cognitive disorders, so forth. 56%, that's a huge percentage.
That's a staggering number. And that one that I was not aware of. I've been kind of making light of some of this during our conversation today. But that's a sobering statistic. And in those cases, I would want to have pity on those young women and hope that they can get better.
Yeah, absolutely. They need help.
Yeah, you start thinking better about yourself, you'll think better about your fellow man or woman.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is that they have been brainwashed by the feminist ideology that women are the victims of the oppressive patriarchy, and you and I have trouble kind of grasping that. Think about the effect of that belief on your daily life and on your daily interactions with other people. So it really is stunning to think about that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this has been an enlightening conversation and one I've thoroughly enjoyed. I've learned a lot this morning. Thank you for coming on with us, Ed Bartlett. He is the founder of SAVE, and he's trying to stop aggressive and violent activity towards men and boys. And so I think that is probably a good cause. And I'm glad we got you on our side, Ed. And put us on your mailing list if you would, johngordontruth@gmail.com. And our listeners and viewers today, you can also express your opinion. If we've got some angry women out there that want to weigh in on this, just write johngordontruth@gmail.com. We'll read it and we'll respond to you. Probably not in kind, however. Thank you, Ed. Have a great rest of your day.
Hey, great to chat with you, John. Be in touch.